I've spent the last 3.5 hours on the phone with my writer Morty, going over everything Lou Reed, everything not let's say Velvet Revolver, Velvet Underground, everything Bowie, everything Mick Ronson. I've been this record and in the world of what, Lou Reed represents. I'm thinking about junkies and transgenders and orgies at the factory and everything. Everything Warhol. And I'm in that place where Penn, and I mean this, like, I'm a very, very new Lou Reed Velvet Underground guy. And Emily, when we were booking this show, she's like, this is what we need to get Penn on for, because this is your jam. Even Morty knew, my writer knew that you are like, this is your, if you were like, my artist is X, like Guns N' Roses is a band that transformed my life. And it was like, here I am before Guns N' Roses, here I am after. Lou Reed and I'm assuming all like the Velvet Underground as well is your X. Am I right?
Yes. I mean, I've always been a big music fan. I would not be able to exclude Dylan and Zappa from my life, but Lou is the one I became the closest friend with. Lou and I were very close, and Lou was also really important to me. Lou used to say that everybody said the Velvet Underground were drug music, and I was the one who proved that wasn't true, because I've never had a sip of alcohol or any drug in my life.
Are you serious?
And that's true. And I was actually, when I met Lou, I was president of the Velvet Underground and the Lou Reed fan club. So when Lou used to be playing shows, he would call me up to check lyrics with me.
Are you serious?
Cool. Lou and I became very, very close. Oddly, not oddly at all, I guess, but in the 90s, when he was clean and sober, Lou and I spent a lot of time together. And I think I may have been useful to him because I was sober and because of the goals he wanted then. But, the first time I heard, there's a few things you remember hearing the first time, or at least I do.
Yeah, sure.
One of them is Roadrunner by Jonathan Richman, when I knew that the whole world had changed.
We did that record. And that's Modern Lovers, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Modern Lovers, we did that. Great, yeah, great.
And Jonathan became a very close friend of mine.
And we actually had, it was really cool when we did that record. We actually, the next week, we had, is it Joey Harrison? The guitarist.
Jerry Harrison.
Jerry Harrison, yeah.
Jerry Harrison.
Yeah, we had Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads, who was also in the Modern Lovers, and to talk about Talking Heads, but then also it was like a double-sided episode because we got to go back and talk about Modern Lovers. So,
well, it's interesting. The three records were, Ramones, Blitzkrieg Bop, Roadrunner, and Walk on the Wild Side. Completely changed me. And those were kind of bam, bam, bam. I came a little bit late to the Velvet Underground. I'm one of those people, everybody wants to claim that they were big Velvet Underground fans, and then kind of went along with Lou Reed because of his cachet from the Velvet Underground. I was a Lou Reed fan and then went back to the Velvet Underground, which I guess is a line from Fleetwood Mac, going back to the Velvet Underground. Forgive me for that. That was an accidental quote.
I like it. It's apt.
Which is heartbreaking because my age is exactly wrong, because the Velvet Underground were playing. I am from a dead factory town in western Massachusetts that had no rock and roll, no live venues. And just because of weirdness, the Velvet Underground played more 20 miles from my home than they played anywhere but New York.
No way.
There was a roller rink that changed into a weird club in the late 60s where the Velvets played. But I
Wow.
was 14,
Too young, yeah.
and 14 was the wrong age in a farm town to go see the Velvet Underground. Um, but I remember I was driving, and the Velvet Underground. Lou Reed was singing "Walk on the Wild Side," and I had never heard. I had never heard ennui injected into rock and roll. Um, I mean, that's me. It
Yeah.
had been injected into rock and roll before that, but for me, and that singing flat and emotionless. And I remember hearing "huh" when he says that "huh." He does a rock and roll "huh," but he does it at a really low level. And I was totally rock and roll was all screaming to me. It was nothing but screaming. And then this person who had this, by the way, you have to mention that Flowers, Henry Flowers, just died this week.
Yeah, my Morty, my writer wanted me to bring that up. He's he's the guy I go over everything with, and basically, like I said, schooled me on everything. And so I was going to mention that, but yes, he just passed away.
Well, Flowers, what's his first name?
Herbie.
Herbie.
Herbie? Is there, I think it is Herbie, right?
I
hope
don't
I'm right.
know. Begins with an H. I know that.
I'll take a look right now.
That bass line.
No, it is. It's Herbie Flowers. Yeah.
Yeah.
That bass line, which now lives on in rap and lives on in sampling.
Yep.
And that reverse sound of the electric and the upright crossing, and then the switching off, doing lead upright, and I mean a lot of songs had used electric bass and acoustic bass before. I mean Brian Wilson used it a lot, and a lot of the Sun Session guys used it. They used a Dan Electra, which is 6-string bass, and used that for the melody, and then used the upright bass for the bottom, for the gut punch, and that's no longer necessary because you with recording techniques you can get that off an electric or an upright. But before that, when you could saturate a mic too easily, you couldn't get that bottom. So it's not like electric and acoustic together was unheard of, but electric and acoustic playing rival lines and interchanging with one another was, I don't think there are any famous, nothing's ever the first, but I think it was the first famous use of it. And Herbie Flowers claims, I don't know him, did not know him, but claims in an interview that the only reason that bass line came to be was he had a sessions fee for one instrument, and if he could convince Lou to have another one, he would double his sessions rate. So he got to play both the acoustic and the upright. And Will Lee from David Letterman's band, the famous jumping bass player, he showed me a way that he was getting that sound from one bass, playing it solo and playing it live. And he's the only one I've ever heard do that. It was a really beautiful hack to make that work. But the Herbie Flowers bass line, and hearing that as rock and roll, as pop music, it's a straight 3-chord. But hearing it done with the intellectual, an intellectual ennui, if you will, coupled with this kinky excitement, was really fascinating to me. The idea that you could be getting head and not be excited about it was a revelation to my young heart. And also, I was a farm boy. When Lenny Bruce and people like that make fun of Goyim as being big and dumb and square-headed and from farms. That was me. And
Yeah.
all I ever wanted was to be Jewish, gay, and from New York. And instead, I was big and goy and from Massachusetts. And as Spike Lee says in Do the Right Thing, go back to Massachusetts. I mean,
Yeah.
Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, is like the Kentucky of New England.
What is that? Is that I mean, I've been to Boston, and I've been
No,
to Springfield. Is that
right,
close?
Springfield. Well, picture Springfield if it weren't a city.
Okay, yeah, dude, it's Mad Max. Like you get outside of that casino and the NBA Hall of Fame, and it is bad, man. That is a bad town.
Yeah, well, Greenfield is a dead factory town.
Yeah.
And I was living in Greenfield, reading the Village Voice, reading the East Village Other, listening to Lenny Bruce all the time, reading National Lampoon, listening to Dylan and Frank Zappa, and really wanting a taste of what I imagined New York to be. And Walk on the Wild Side came on the radio. And I mean, I'm throwing away all my kind of rock snob cachet because you're supposed to not come to Lou Reed from his hit single. You're supposed to already know Lou Reed,
like White,
and be well versed in Lou Reed.
Like Velvet.
Yes, of course.
You're supposed to like what is it? The hardest listen I've ever had on this podcast, next to PIL. Next to PIL Metal Box was White. Was it White Heat, White Light? Is that it?
Yeah, White Light, White Heat. White Light,
yeah,
White Heat,
which I mean, thank God I had Wayne Fetterman on to like really bring to life. Because I think what's good about those earlier records is more or less, which we'll get to in a minute, is like the story of like Lou and Andy and Nico and then how he meets Bowie and fucking, because even in that,
well, let me put this.
Go ahead, yeah.
Let me put this as gently as I can.
Please.
You are 100% wrong.
Oh, okay, dude. Please. I'm like I said, I'm new and I'm just regurgitating what I've heard.
What I find fascinating is Lou Reed is really brought up in doo-wop.
Oh.
Lou Reed loves girl groups and doo-wop. And Lou Reed has a sensibility and an ear to want to do pop songs. And then two things happen that change everything. One is he goes to Syracuse University and he has Delmore Schwartz as his literature teacher and poetry teacher, who starts talking about telling dark short stories. And Lou gets this idea, which is remarkable that this idea took this long to hit rock and roll that clearly. What if I told gritty short stories in the rock and roll form? But then where we're getting to where you're wrong, he then teams up with John Cale. And the sound you're hearing on John Cale is not trying to do pop music and tell stories and having a sloppiness there, which is the way some people on first hearing hear that. John Cale was an Aaron Copland scholar. He was a prodigy. He played viola at Carnegie Hall when he was 12 years old. He was seriously in the John Cage school of experimental music. He would do drone music and drone tones tuned to the refrigerator with Riley and all those guys in New York. They would play one note for like an hour and a half. They would do real experimental stuff. When he was at music school, he tried to write a piece where 88 pianos were thrown into a lake. John Cale was as far experimental as you can get. He was on To Tell the Truth, an old talk show, as having played I think it's a 35-hour piece of music where he repeats the same 6 measures over and over again. And he was very much into John Cage. You can't even talk about the Velvet Underground without going deeply into John Cage first and experimental music. So you've got John Cage. Obviously, you got John Cale,
Okay.
who wants to be John Cage, wants to be experimental, wants to be doing 12-tone serial music, experimental music, crazy shit, crazy noise shit that could never, in your wildest dreams, be called pop music or rock and roll. Then you have Lou Reed, who essentially wants to be in the Supremes.
Yeah.
And then you have Warhol, who knows nothing about music.
Right.
Less than zero about music. And Andy says, why don't you do a rock band?
Yeah.
You're at the factory. Why don't you do a rock band? And then they bring in Maureen Tucker, who I have played bass with Maureen Tucker and with Lou Reed. And I knew John Cale, Sterling Morrison. I knew them all except Nico, who I only talked to on the phone. But I knew the others fairly well. You bring in Maureen Tucker, who replaced their first drummer, who was, let this sentence sink in, too crazy for the Velvet Underground. I'm going to say that again. He was too crazy for the Velvet Underground. He thought that showing up for a gig was selling out. So
that's like the job.
they replaced him with Maureen Tucker, who, as Lou said, I don't know if he said this publicly, but he said it to me. He said, it took me 2 weeks to figure out whether she's a boy or a girl, and I'm good at that.
That's right.
Maureen was insane, totally outside of everything.
Yeah.
She just wanted to be in the Beatles, but played that kick drum on its side and gave that the rhythm. Then you have Sterling Morrison, who's a incredibly, he's a college professor. He was a college professor, intellectual guitar player. And you have the highest IQ ever put on stage in a rock and roll band. Or you could say, since Dylan dined alone, I suppose you want to turn on the Jefferson thing. Since Jefferson dined alone. You have this massive brain power coupled with a sexual sensibility, a absolute worship of perversion from Lou Reed, and this noise music of John Cale. But the mistake that you were making, and I playfully said you were wrong about everything, is thinking that the Velvet Underground did not include an absolutely thought out experimental element. John Cale would have been the kind of person who would have done Metal Machine music in the 60s. His idea of music was, right. And then you've got Lou, who's a scenester and who is, fucking anything that moves, which is, I think, the only way to live. And so I was a dumb farmer,
Yeah.
And then on my radio came Walk on the Wild Side and talking about transgender and talking about it not with horror, with a playful love, talking about New York and being bored with all I wanted to live for, and also having that wink to silly rock and roll. Now, Lou Reed with Walk on the Wild Side is a song that those of us who judge the past will be condemned to be judged by the future. A song that opened so many people's minds to gay sex and transgender is now considered to be an anti-transgender song and is not allowed on some college campuses, which is heartbreaking. It's similar to Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers being two of the most important people in feminism
Yeah.
and then called anti-feminist because they did jokes about being housewives. Whereas they're actually making as much money as male comics and changed comedy entirely.
Sure.
And Louis Armstrong, who did more for civil rights than anybody, and who Miles Davis treated as though he was some sort of token.
Yeah.
I mean, the big picture will be kind to these people.
Yeah.
The short picture has been unkind.
Sure.
The big picture in transgender rights, I believe, and the big picture in gay rights will be singing Lou Reed's praises. But there was a time right now when plucked his eyebrows on the way, shaved her legs, and then he was a she. She said, "Hey, babe." There's a time right now when that is considered to be too facile and too playful for something. And I want to say that people are having a great deal of trouble with it. Trans rights in this country is a big, big problem.
Yeah.
And all of that I'm saying, and all of that I agree. And all I'm saying is give Lou Reed a little kiss.
Sure.
That's all I want. And the way Lou wrote that was he was asked to write a musical based on Walk on the Wild Side, the book. And that's as far as it got, was that one song. But I remember hearing that song, Little Joe Never Once Gave It Away. That taught me about Joe D'Alessandro, which I then went and saw the Warhol movies. Sugar Plum Fairy, I learned about.
These are all real people,
Yeah, that brought me into the Warhol world. Now later, I became friends with Warhol, and got to know him a little bit, and I became very good friends with Debbie Harry, who, of course, was Warhol's closest friend, but that's never talked about. It's other people take credit for that, but she and Warhol were very close. So you have this weird thing where Warhol cares about pop music only because he cares about stardom. Warhol does not know anything about music. Nothing.
Well, he's kind of, and you can tell me if I'm wrong again, but he's more of like a creative director, right? Like, because he knows that art can now be mixed with rock and roll, or it can be movies, right. It can be pop culture. So it's all he just wants to guide.
The Exploding Plastic Inevitable, was Warhol projecting movies on the Velvet Underground while they played, and they used to play until everyone left.
Wow.
Now, the thing I'll say, one of the things I'm most proud of is Jonathan Richman followed Lou Reed around in a stalker way, to the point of being annoying and maybe dangerous, and would sleep on Lou Reed's couch. Jonathan Richman wanted to be the Velvet Underground. Now, Jonathan Richman became a very important force in his own right, but years later, he was stalking Lou when he was 17, 18. He became the force of the modern lovers. I'm making this up, but early 20s at some point. And he wrote a song called Velvet Underground. Have you heard the song Velvet Underground by Jonathan Richman?
I don't think so. If I have it, it's a long time ago when we were doing the record.
Everything you need to know about the Velvet Underground is in that song by Jonathan Richman, including a spot-on impersonation of Lou Reed doing Sweet Jane in the middle of it.
Nice.
And he has the sound, is kind of loud, kind of rude, like the heat's turned off and you're low on food. And he has the description of when the bikers and the college types hit, which is the Velvet Underground. It was amazing. More so than the Grateful Dead, more so than Steppenwolf, was the intellectuals hitting the dirty, kinky. And it's a great combination. It's where you want to live your whole life. Boom, 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 boom. But I will say, and if it sounds like I'm bragging, I am. Jonathan Richman was playing I forgot what place, but playing in New York. And I called up Lou and said, let's go see Jonathan. And he said, that fucking crazy asshole that slept on my fucking couch. What are we going to go see? I said, let's go. Let's go. So Lou and I went out to dinner. And Jonathan at that time was staying at my house, staying in my apartment in New York. He used to always stay at my apartment. And I called up Jonathan and said, Lou Reed and I are coming to your show tonight. And it was like Jonathan was going to pass out.
He freaked out.
And I said, and you're going to play Velvet Underground. And he said, I can't play Velvet Underground in front of Lou. And I said, well, Jonathan, you're going to. You're going to. That's what you're going to do. I said, I insist.
Oh, my God. Dude, I would freak out too, dude.
I'm insisting.
Yeah,
and so Lou and I went to see Jonathan. We sat down at our table, and Jonathan came out and started playing, and Lou was, which is not unusual, emotionless. And then Jonathan, we were over stage right. Jonathan is facing front, of course. We're over here. And Jonathan turns stage left. I mean, turns his whole body stage left to the point of even turning the mic. So he is at best profile to us.
Sure.
He's coming as close to turning his back on us as he possibly can.
I like feel the nervousness for him. It's like, oh my God, I can empathize. Jesus.
And he's going to now do Velvet Underground, which has in the middle of it him doing an impersonation of Lou Reed.
Oh God. How are you feeling? Are you like, this is gonna rule? Like, I can't wait.
I was so fucking hard. I was shooting in my fucking pants. My two of the biggest heroes in my life.
Oh my God.
And I was making this moment happen. And I said, Lou, Jonathan starts the first few chords, and I said, hey, Lou, listen up, right? And Jonathan starts playing Velvet Underground, and there's a line in Velvet Underground. Lou had no self-esteem issues, let's put it that way, none. And there's a line of Velvet Underground that I just love because you wouldn't expect this line. And Jonathan is correct, but it's not the first line that would pop into your mind. He sings the line, they were America at its best. And Lou leans over and goes, yeah, that's right. Yeah. He understands. We were America at its best. I think that's accurate. But I don't mean to assign homework. But if you hear the song "Velvet Underground" by Jonathan Richman,
I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to listen to it as soon as I get in the car to drive to Philly. Like
Can you play it? Can you play it right now?
Play a little bit, Jay. Jay, you got it. Go ahead. And that's like, it's like that, almost, it's just a perfect pop song too, which is what fucking Lou Reed loves.
He also says, at first sight, you'd know that for certain rules about modern music wouldn't apply tonight. And that's what I mean. And you hear when he does that, Sister Ray, Jonathan does the John Cale drone from the bass and the viola vocally. He does that because he's only got him and a guitar. And then we went out to Carnegie Deli, the three of us, and sat for 5 hours telling jokes.
So great. Which is Lou has a great sense of humor, I'm assuming. Like, because I know he's you have to be smart to be a comic. And I know the guy is extremely well versed. That's what always is so shocking about some of these guys, like him, Iggy Pop, even like Henry Rollins too. These guys are like they're well fucking read.
Yeah. Well, Lou actually, when the Velvet Underground played Wembley Stadium in the 90s, after not having played since the 60s, Incidentally, what was the first line of that concert? Oh, yeah, this is for you, Penn. That was the first thing that was said on stage, by the way.
Wembley.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, dude.
Because they had a rule when the Velvet Underground got back together, no one was allowed to rehearsals unless they were on everyone's list of people that were allowed. So I knew I was on Maureen Tucker's. I knew I was on Lou Reed's. I knew I was on John Cale's. So when Sterling Morrison got into town, I met him, took him out to coffee. So during all the rehearsals of the Velvet Underground, there was one person there, and it was me.
I love that. Oh my
That's
God.
awesome.
So it was pretty great. And at the after party, Lou had me telling jokes. I was up on stage doing stand-up for, Ray Davies and Chrissy Hines and The Clash and everybody that was at that first show.
Can I ask you a question? Because I'm just curious, being that, it's one of my favorite documentaries, jokes, everything. Did Lou Reed ever give you his version of the Aristocrats?
No, he did not.
He did not.
But he liked the movie very much. But he did tell, I would try to teach Lou. Lou loved my telling of the bear joke, which is one where the bear fucks the guy in the ass and, you didn't come here to hunt. Lou loved that version. And there is a version. The guy who made the Velvet Underground documentary from the 90s said he has, I'd never seen it, but he has on an outtake Lou telling the bear joke backstage.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Lou
God.
loved jokes and loved to laugh.
Oh, I believe that. I mean, he had such a crass, I don't know, early days and everything. Like,
I will tell you, I'll tell you another one of my favorite stories. Lou and I used to go out every night we weren't working. We'd go out together. And we were in New York going to see Les Paul. Went to see Les Paul with Lou. We went a couple times. And Lou did not like autographs at all. I don't mind it. But someone came up to the table at the Les Paul show, and he said, "Wow, Penn Jillette and Lou Reed together. Can I get your autograph?" And I don't know what was wrong with Lou, but he was in a good mood. And he said, "Okay." And the guy handed us a piece of paper, and Lou took it and signed it. And I took it to sign it. But before I signed it, I read it. And it said, "Magically yours, Penn Jillette." And I wrote, "Hey, take a walk on the wild side, Lou Reed." And we handed it back to him. And he looked at it, smiled, and walked away. And he said, "What did you write?" And I said, I wrote, "Walk on the wild side, Lou Reed." But fuck you! Fuck, what are you doing? Fuck you! Well, I said, "Magically yours, you cunt? Magically yours?" He said, "Walk on the wild side?" I said, "Fuck you! You write magically yours, I'm writing walk on the wild side." And I told that story every interview I can because I want that guy, if he has that piece of paper, he can name his fucking price. I want that so badly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Did you ever get to talk to Lou about I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to kind of focus on this record a little bit, is like on what it was like to work with and find out that David Bowie, at the height of Bowie being the coolest guy, wanting to work on this record with him, because I know the first record was not a success. It wasn't a hit. And we've already done Berlin, which is crazy that this came before Berlin, but yeah, please tell me everything you know. And
it's fascinating because this is what I was saying about John Cale and the Drone. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you heard the Velvet Underground, Heroin, Waiting for a Man, Sister Ray, and of course, Sweet Jane. And Sweet Jane is interesting because Sweet Jane's in the middle, because Sweet Jane's kind of not John Cale. there was a tension constantly in the Velvet Underground with Lou wanting to be the Supremes and John Cale wanted to be John Cage. And fighting. I mean, and really fighting. It was not just artistic. It was very, very,
Yeah.
didn't last long. I don't think it came to blows, but it was bad. And that is what you hear on those records. You know, it's really like taking someone who has total pop sensibilities and putting them with a complete nut. You know, I mean, Zappa was that in himself, but this is two forces just banging heads.
Yeah.
So Lou gets to go out, and everybody thought that first solo Lou Reed record would sound like the Velvet Underground. But he's got like Quaalude thunder on the bass drums. He's got like keyboards. It sounds like pop music. And everybody was shocked that that's what Lou wanted to sound like, you know?
Yeah.
And David Bowie was able to come in just brilliantly and pull out of the Velvet Underground what was Lou, but allowing him to still have the balls of the Factory. And what he did was he replaced, in my mind, he replaced John Cale's experimental avant-garde music with Lou Reed's, and I don't want to use the word sexuality, but let's just say lifestyle.
Yeah.
Now, so what you have is take the of John Cale and replace that with the underground lifestyle sex scene of New York, which David Bowie was very interested in. And then what you've got is you take out the drone and you put in the Too Cool for School ennui sexiness, you know. Then comes Pancake Factor #1, eyeliner, rose tip, lip gloss, such fun. You're such a cute little, such a sweet little girl. We're coming out of the closets. I mean, this is why it's so horrifying that the transgender movement, some of them, you know, there's no such thing as a movement. There's no such thing as a group of people. But some individuals that identify as transgender have said things bad about Lou Reed. Lou Reed was married.
I know. That's what it's like.
To a man in drag, to a trans, a man about my size, a woman about my size, Rachel. I don't know how much street cred you need to get.
Yeah. I mean, that's insane. And it's like, listen, I mean, from an outsider perspective, you know, just listening to even Walk on the Wild, none of it sounds bad. If anything, it's like, it's so ahead of its time where, yeah, go ahead.
It's also the Randy Newman problem, right? Randy Newman,
it's called racist.
Writes the song.
Stuff. Yeah,
writes the song "Redneck."
Yeah,
he uses the N-word, and then people are bothered just by the fact he uses the N-word. So Lou Reed says, and the colored girls go do 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 do. Now you're allowed to say people of color. You can't say colored people any longer, and for good reason. Great, that's the way it should be. But that song at that time, he was not really making fun of, not really lampooning, but certainly taking a piss on people who used African-American backup singers in white bands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I thought it was not. So, I thought it was like because he's telling these stories. I thought it was almost like a Greek chorus, kind of like you know, like you could see them up above as he's singing a story about it, and they're in this like thing, like overlooking everybody.
It's also this great reminder. I mean, yes, it is a Greek chorus. It is looking over the whole thing, but my point was just that phrase, and the color girls sing, is taking a piss on the people who use black backing singers when they don't have anyone black in their band.
It's self-aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's aware of that. But when you talk about the Greek chorus, this is what's so fascinating, is he tells these Delmore Schwartz ultra short stories about Jackie and Joe and Sugar Plum Fairy. And then over the top of it is New York doo-wop.
Yeah.
And that's the part of that song. I mean, the thing that is so important about New York music to remember is it all goes back to Dion. You know, it all goes back to New York doo-wop. And Paul Simon and Lou Reed are the same person. And that is something that's very hard to say. But they grew up blocks apart, and they grew up entirely inundated in doo-wop and went on to have intellectual careers that always has a doo-wop feel on top of it. And when Lou writes down do 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 do, he is saying that although we are sophisticated New Yorkers filled with ennui and kinky sex, the spirit of Dion is over us.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Dude.
And I will also apologize to you. I was out to dinner with Iggy Pop, David Bowie, and Lou Reed. It was the four of us. At that time, I should have been thinking of you. And I should have said, let's talk about that time in the 70s we were all working together. But instead, they did nothing. Lou brought me in like I was a science project and said, he's never done any drugs or alcohol.
Uh-oh.
And David went, what? And I said, no, I just haven't. And then David said, well, you smoke dope, right? I said, no, I answered the question. And then Iggy said, well, you're drinking beers and shit. I said, no. And then David goes, speed? And I go, no. And then Iggy goes, acid? And I go, no. I said, I've given you a blanket statement. It's like saying, I don't eat shellfish. And now you're saying clams? Oysters? No.
Crab cakes.
You can,
Well,
at
that table, they're all seafood champions. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So we did walk down the street together, the three of us singing Iggy Pop songs with us doing backups, David, Lou, and I. But I lived my fantasy. Unfortunately, I didn't live yours and asked David enough about producing that. But, you know, there's an argument. David Bowie went to see the Velvet Underground. David Bowie saw Doug Yule, who replaced Lou in the Velvet Underground, and thought he was seeing Lou Reed for the whole show. And David has hinted that experience of having the person who you thought you were going to see be more important than who it really was is what gave him the idea for Ziggy Stardust.
Wow. Holy shit.
And, of course, Mick Ronson was about to go on the Rolling Thunder review with Bob Dylan. So Mick Ronson connects everything that matters to me in the world. But Transformer, you know, I heard Walk on the Wild Side on the radio. Mm-hmm. I listened for who it was. Went out as soon as I could to Gribben's Music Store in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and had them order Transformer.
Fuck, they had to order it. Good God.
Yeah. And then I memorized every nuance of that record, every single nuance. And I listened to Transformer over and over again because it was all I wanted was that kind of dirty sexual freedom, intellectual, accepting. The sophistication of New York was all I lived for, all I wanted. And that became everything to me. Then I went back and discovered the Velvet Underground. And then there was the Velvet Underground Appreciation Society, which I formed with a man by the name of MC Caustic. And we put out uh, 18 cassettes of every bootleg of the Velvet Underground.
I love it.
And I was sitting with Lou one day, and Lou said, if I ever find out who put out that cassette set of everything I ever fucking did with no rights and no nothing, I'm going to punch him in the face. And I went, Lou, and he
No.
went, it was you? I said, yeah. I put that together and I paid for it and I put it out. And Lou went, I said, you're going to hit me? And Lou said, can I have a copy? So if you go to the Lou Reed exhibit that's in New York at the library that Laurie put together, in a case, there are those cassettes all set up. And it says, which really makes me laugh, and Laurie did this to make me laugh, it says, gift from Penn Jillette.
I love that. Fuck, man.
Great. I'd love
Well,
to
I
go
mean,
track by track, but I want to make sure we don't miss Perfect Day. I mean, I just like, it's such a special song and so different, it feels to me.
well, I also love the first time I heard that song, which is in Train Spotting, and what a perfect use of, because the song is about a perfect day. Without you, I'd rather die, and it's almost sounds like a death march, and then to have it over somebody being the happiest on heroin and then overdosing, it was the perfect introduction for that song, for me at least, to really understand the depth of it.
Yeah, Perfect Day, to me, and I never talked to Lou about this, I want to make very clear, almost all of what I'm saying is not informed by conversation with Lou, because
Sure.
when you're friends and hanging out, you don't spend a lot of time analyzing. I mean, I asked him a lot of stuff, but there's only so much you can get away with.
Yeah, without being a complete fanboy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I was a complete fanboy. There was no. As a matter of fact, when I met Lou, we were off Broadway at the West Side Arts Theater, like a 200-seat theater, and Teller doesn't speak on stage very often, and we came out to start the show, and Lou was in house seats right there in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of doing the first line of the show, I said, "Oh my God, it's Lou Reed." And Teller went, "Jesus Christ." So that night, the opening of the Penn and Teller show was that. And then after the show, I went out and I met Lou. And we chatted and we got along pretty well. And Lou said, and this is just so perfect, Lou said, we should go out and have lunch and hang out and stuff. I said, well, Lou, I'd love that. And Lou said, listen, man, if we're going to be friends, you need to stop crying. I was so excited meeting Lou Reed, I was just crying, tears going down my cheeks. So I always remember that. If we're going to be friends, you got to stop crying.
That's so
great.
awesome. That's so awesome.
But Perfect Day is one of those songs like Born in the USA, where Born in the USA is a song about deep ambivalence about being born in the USA. Yeah. Born down in the dead man's town, the first hit I took was when I hit the ground. And yet Reagan is using it as Born in the USA, and assholes are throwing their fist in the air for Born in the USA, And where it's, you spend half your life just covering up that you were born in the USA. And Perfect Day, to me, in Train Spotting, is not superimposing one point of view over another for a juxtaposition, but rather that information is in there from the very beginning. Lou does this thing. It's a technique that he uses in, I can't pull up all the songs he uses them in right off the top of my head, but where he uses the coda in order to inform the rest of the song. He does Perfect Day, which may be describing a perfect day. We don't really know. The protagonist is saying it's a perfect day, and he's saying it to someone he's probably having sex with. But the melody is sweet, and the words are sweet, but everything's not quite right. And then he ends with, "You're going to reap just what you sow."
Yeah.
That changes everything. That's biblical, that's Old Testament, and that is a cosmic punishment, almost like for lying about the perfect day, almost like for the sex they engaged in, almost like what they did. So Perfect Day being seen, which it is now, as a pure love song in celebration of an afternoon, I'm not sure I'm on board with that. You know, it's like Sweet Jane is exactly the opposite, because Sweet Jane, he describes a complicated relationship that is not going well, and then ends with wine and roses seem to whisper to him when she smiles. So that's the ending that goes with Perfect Day, and you're going to reap just what you sow goes with Sweet Jane, because they're both the same ambivalence about love. And if you can't talk about do 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 without talking about Street Hassle, which is Lou's masterpiece. 11 minutes, 3 movements, tied together by a bass line with octaves that's then put on cello, then put on bass, then put on guitar, and then tied together with the phrase sha-la-la. Sha-la-la-la. And sha-la-la is used for a woman paying a male prostitute to fuck her, which is the only happy part of the song. Second, a woman found dead on the floor after a overdose, which as the first line, one of the more pleasant first lines of a song ever written. That cunt's not breathing. I think she's had too much, or something or other. Hey man, you know what I mean? And then the third one, which is about a gay love affair falling apart. And all tied together with Sha La La. In the first one, Sha La La is joyous about sex. And in the second one, Sha La La is about indifference to human life. And in the third one, Sha La La is about the inevitability of a broken heart. Sha La La La, man. And that Sha La 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 ties in with the doot, 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 doot. It's really interesting that someone is taking Delmore Schwartz gritty, nasty, sad short stories, and then adding doo-wop on top while you're living that life. It's really, really fascinating. And all of that, even though Transformer is the pop album that Lou did, everything you're going to see in Berlin and Street Hassle and New York and the Blue Mask and everything that comes later, and everything you saw in the Velvet Underground is in that record, except it's done a little more playfully. Also, when we listen to the stuff about getting into drag and Good Night Ladies, that's T.S. Eliot, right? Good night, ladies, ladies, good night. When you get into that, that kind of boys in the band, gay culture
Yeah.
of the 70s, now it seems to us quaint, you know? Now it seems to us sweet. At the time Lou was doing that, in my high school, people were being beat up for even the slightest hint they might be gay. You know, I was wearing nail polish and I had hair down my back, and I was beat up often, and I had a girlfriend. You know, so
Wow.
you have to remember the stuff that seems poppy and middle of the road on Lou's album is actually incredibly ballsy. That is a big fucking swinging dick. You have to remember that David Bowie, Lou Reed, even Mott the Hoople, even New York Dolls, all that glam rock stuff. You know, Alice Cooper brings it over into heavy metal, but you know, proto heavy metal. I don't know the exact terms you want to use, but yeah, whatever. But for those guys, for David to be in gold lame, you know, and for Lou to be wearing all that pancake makeup on the overexposed cover, all of that, what we see now as playful, gender playfulness, was at the time really dangerous shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Lou Reed's on We, over the top of that, you dig, is not indifference. It is a certain kind of swagger, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just this, imagine how tough you have to be, you know, to go on to top 40 radio, which is a room full of, you know, idiot jocks, especially then, you know, fools, assholes, and to just sit there talking about transgender people and drag queens and not doing it all with an in-your-face thing, but just going, yeah, that's what we do. Do, 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 do. You know, it's just I mean, that is, you know, that's balls like this.
It like normalizes it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like
well, now we've normalized it.
Yeah.
But at the time, it wasn't normalized. It was just really, really, really brave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, not edgy, because edgy implies a self-consciousness. You know, this was truth. You know, it was not being edgy for the sake of edgy. It was Lou really reporting on New York City. That is the stuff. You don't get that from Bob Dylan. You know, Bob Dylan says in an early interview about the Medgar Evers song that he wrote, I got this all from the newspapers. And in the early stuff, he is doing some reporting. And of course, Frank Zappa, with Trouble Coming Every Day, he's just reporting on the race riots. That's just reporting. But it's pretty rare in pop music to have that kind of reporting. Of course, you can't say any of this without Joni Mitchell. I mean, Joni Mitchell, the genius that like really pushes all of this. And although you wouldn't think of Joni Mitchell and Lou Reed in the same breath, you should, because they're both telling personal stories where they don't even change the fucking names. You know, Carrie really was the guy with the cane. What's that?
Sounds like Josh will call out people from our past and say,
"Oh yeah, I feel like you got to give a last name sometimes." I've gotten in trouble, but then you know that only one time somebody's really brought it up, but also they can go fuck themselves, right? Right. Can I ask you a question?
Well, there's another
Penn,
way to say they can go fuck
go,
themselves,
how do you
which
say
is
it?
doot to doot to doot
Yeah,
doot
yeah, yeah, yeah,
doot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Penn, I'm curious, and I mean, if I'm like, because as a true fan, and what kind of like on what we're talking about the material in Transformer, whereas it is, and I don't like say edgy, but he's bringing light a lot of this the New York underworld or the world that he's in. Why did he go so much darker in Berlin? Because we did that record, man, was that like 2 years ago? And I mean, it's like, it's, that couple with the drug addiction and the abuse. And there's just it's a fucking, it's tough,
they're
man. It's,
taking
go
they're
ahead.
taking her children away because they say, and the most unbelievable line, "You can hit me all you want to. I don't love you anymore."
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Berlin is just who'd you talk to in Berlin? Did you talk to Ratso?
No, we did. It was Tom, God damn it. What's his line? Not Tom,
Rhodes.
Tom Rhodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really a hip comic. He's lived it. He's had an interesting life and like has kind of lived all over the world and has lived in, I think, some of these situations. But I mean, that's an album of it's prostitution and suicide and the violence and the depression. It's,
Well,
and it's Bob Ezrin, who's like a fucking concept record god, as far as producer. But it's like the album was considered a disaster by Rolling Stone, whereas this is that Tin Pan Alley doo-wop songwriting, bridge
yeah,
building kind of
yeah.
thing where it's a pop record. And I think Bowie is the one. Is it because there was no Bowie in Berlin?
Well, I think Lou. Well, dime store analysis is always worth exactly a dime. It's you know, it's but I want to say first of all, Berlin is only Berlin because it's written about New York, and Lou thought that Berlin was more exotic.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
but it's a New York record.
Yeah.
Um, but Lou Lou has that same fight that is always part of rock and roll. Not recently, not in the past 20 years. Of course, there's been no rock and roll in the past 20 years, but except Bob. But but there's always this fight in rock and roll between commercial and authenticity, right? There's always that fight, and there was always that term of selling out. You know, Captain Beefheart tried to sell out with Safe as Milk and couldn't. He was just too weird. You know, and Zappa has the hit with Valley Girl with his daughter, the only hit Zappa ever had, which he wrote in 3 minutes. Um, and you have that constant thing. Not with Dylan. Dylan's above it, but you know, Springsteen. You got the bullshit dancing the dark shit, but Born to Run is hip. Um, the rock snobs always do that. Now Lou had decided he had a pop sensibility. One part of him wanted to be, Diana Ross, wanted to be a pop star.
Yeah.
And the other part of him wanted to be an outsider, like the people at the factory. Another part of it, and I'm going to say this in a way that Lou wouldn't approve of, but I'm going to say it. And when Lori hears it, if she does, she'll yell at me. Lou wanted to be as smart as John Cale.
Musically.
And yeah, maybe in every way.
Yeah.
And he thought making that album with Bowie, they had dreams of it being successful, but he thought that all the sex stuff would keep him as an outsider. And then he became really popular. Walk on the Wild Side was a hit. And Lou got scared he was losing his credibility. So Lou did Metal Machine music.
Mm-hmm.
And Metal Machine music was so fucking insane. And, torpedoed a career in the clearest way you possibly could.
Wow.
And then Lou said, well, I poured my heart out on Transformer. I really did the Delmore Schwartz short stories. Now I'm going to do it with Berlin. And I mean, Ratso Sloman, who was a writer for Rolling Stone, said that Berlin was going to be bigger than Sgt. Pepper's.
Uh-oh.
He heard an advanced copy of it. And Lou always hated Ratso for saying that because he got his hopes up. First of all, Berlin is better than Sgt. Pepper's, but that's not important.
Okay.
Wow.
Shots fired.
But Sgt. Pepper's a great record. But
Sure.
come on.
I love it.
I think Lou thought that the Delmore Schwartz short story, being able to dig in deep, I don't think Lou realized how much of the sad desperation and horror on his earlier records were being missed. You know, and so, you know, Springsteen did the same thing, right? Springsteen did Born in the USA, then did another 10 records making up for it.
Yeah.
Where he tried to say, no, here's what I meant.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, you could talk to Bob Ezrin about this, because I was talking to Bob about this. Rock and roll critics were writing so much about smart music. They were writing so much about rock and roll growing up. They're writing so much about the short story and the intellect that I think Lou Reed started to believe it. Lou Reed started to believe that rock and roll was a form that was not for 16-year-olds. You know, when you listen to the Beatles are doing children's music. You know, that's for 16-year-olds and always will be. And even if you're 75 and listening to it, it's nostalgia for children's music. It's all essentially Yellow Submarine, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how much John Lennon wanted to be Bob Dylan, he wasn't, you know. I mean, you can compare Norwegian Wood to Fourth Time Around, which are the same song, the same modal structure, and it's Bob Dylan teaching John Lennon how to do a Bob Dylan song, same subject matter. You can see that the Beatles are pop performers, you know, and Bob Dylan is doing it. Bob Dylan fits in, as he should, with Shakespeare and Robert Burns and, you know, the great writers of history. And the Beatles are fitted with Cole Porter and Bing Crosby and the great pop people of all time. And I think Lou was thinking that the pop sensibility could fall away and he could get really dark. I think in Lou's mind, the subject matter on Transformer is as dark as the subject matter at the Velvet Underground, which it is, but you can't put those two records on and think it. If you put on White Light and White Heat, you can't tell it's the same subject matter as Transformer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when Lou sings about blowjobs in Sister Ray and couldn't hit it sideways and all that stuff, you know, she's sucking on my ding dong, you know, she's sucking on my ding dong. When he's doing that whole thing, I think that the Lou Reed subject matter was so clear to Lou Reed that he didn't know that idiots would miss it. I mean, and of course, once again, the point of view of history becomes fucked up because I'm giving Lou motives he didn't really have. Mm-hmm. I'm projecting my own stuff on there because Lou didn't learn a lesson from Berlin because Lou did Street Hassle. Do you know Street Hassle?
If I've heard it, it's been a minute.
It's his 8th album, and he just must have put an album out every year by then because he just post.
Well, Street Hassle. I was once talking to a DJ in a gay club in San Francisco, and we shared a love of Lou Reed. And Street Hassle had just come out, and I said to him, "It's just an amazing record. It's just a fucking amazing record. You know, we love Lou." And he said, I got like 3 minutes in, and I said, "Fuck this. I got enough trouble in my own life. I don't need this." Lou had even crossed a line with the hardcore fans with Street Hassle, because Street Hassle is, listen to me, darker than Berlin.
Wow. That's crazy.
I can give you information on this. Lou had Springsteen read the interstitial monologue in there, and Springsteen's uncredited. There's no way on the record, nothing. He doesn't say Springsteen. And I said to Lou, Jesus, that's a weird choice to have Springsteen do that whole interstitial thing. And he said, well, you know, if I'd have done it, it would have sounded really pretentious. But Springsteen, he gets away with that shit.
Yeah, that's fucking, god damn, dude.
But what he says was, that's just a lie. It's a lie she tells her friends. The truth is a sad truth, and life's full of sad truths, because tramps like us, we were born to pay. And the last word, pay, is just amazing, hearing Springsteen say, tramps like us, we were born to run, is Springsteen. Tramps like us, we were born to pay, is Lou Reed. And you don't need anything else but that to compare the two.
Wow.
But you need to listen to Street Hassle.
No, I will. I'm
But make sure you have people to be nice to you right afterwards.
Well, this is what I love about doing this podcast, and it's like when you have a guest on that understands it and loves it, you know, I can listen to it and dig it and be like, oh, I really like this. Like, this was a very easy listen of a record. This is something that it's not like we said. We talked about what white heat, white light, or if I
white heat, white light.
Yeah, but we talked about that, and that was like, you know, it's like you have to really spend time with that to appreciate it. You know, it's not some of the other Velvet Underground. It's more like you said, it's an experimental thing. And Berlin was that kind of thing where you're like, fuck, man, this is heavy shit. And this, though, whether it was heavy shit or not, is still essentially a beautiful pop record. And
it's a pop record. It's a pop record.
And to have you on, and go ahead.
David Bowie can make pop records.
Yes,
100%.
I mean, he did Low, and he did Heroes. He did a few others that and of course, I can't even listen to the last one, not yet. Someday, but the one that came out after his death is too difficult.
So good.
Also, as I've now hit, 69 years old, death is less silly than it used to be to me. I've lost too many friends, including David Bowie and Lou Reed. But I mean, you've just made the point. White light, white heat. Conceptually fits directly onto Transformer, but it's not a pop song. Although at Lou's celebration of life at the Apollo, Paul Simon did Pale Blue Eyes, and all these people did songs, and Debbie Harry, the truest punk who's ever lived, the toughest person I've ever met.
Wow.
Debbie Harry. Oh yeah, Sex Pistols are terrified of Debbie. Debbie is not to be fucked with. There's no one tougher than Debbie.
I just saw them live not too long ago. She's a rock star. She's a fucking rock star. Yeah.
I've been to jail. I've been to biker gangs. I've never met anybody as tough as Debbie Harry. When Debbie Harry was asked to do a tribute to Lou Reed, the song she chose to do, White Light, White Heat. Wow. She was not a pussy. everybody else was doing, Perfect Day and
Yeah,
Pale
yeah,
Blue
yeah,
Eyes.
yeah,
But, the one person who had a vagina and was not a pussy,
yeah.
Debbie did White Light, White Heat. But, this is, I want to speak to the drug thing again. Lou and our relationship in a very, very odd way, was very rooted in an anti-drug and anti-alcohol stance,
Yeah.
which is very, very funny because Lou was always offended when people called his music drug music. And he said in many interviews before he met me that there are people that listen to my stuff totally sober. I'm sure of it. And then he found me. And we'd talk about some of his old stuff. And he would say to me, White Light, White Heat, everybody says is about drugs, but you understood it. And I remember one interview where Lou Reed says, and I love this, he said, The Shining, the Kubrick movie,
Yeah.
that's what White Light, White Heat is about. That's what White Light, White Heat is. Now, obviously, it's speed. I mean, there's no doubt it's speed, crystal meth. But Lou would say to me, "You're well versed on drugs." And I'd say, "Well, I got all the drugs secondhand, and I got them from you. And I didn't feel I had to do them because you taught me about them." And I remember there's one very, very, very famous and very, very powerful producer in New York, perhaps the biggest one in my field, television, who worked really hard to get me to try cocaine. I mean, aggressively worked hard. I mean, really hard. I mean, really, really
Come
hard.
on, it's
Told
fun.
me,
Come on.
no, no, no,
Tired,
no,
long
no.
days.
That's not the way you do it with me. He said, "You don't have any control. You're as controlled by drugs as junkies. You're absolutely as controlled by them because you can't do them. If you want to really have control of yourself,
Wow.
you
Yeah,
do a
no.
little." That's the way you get me. You don't do it. You don't get me with fun, motherfucker.
This is bet. Yeah,
But
this is kind of like you think you're stronger than it, but no, it actually has a hold over you. Yeah, so it's like reverse
yeah,
psychology.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's that
genius.
argument. Yeah. So I told Lou that, and Lou wanted to get in the car and go over and punch him out. Lou was so angry. And Lou said to me, which I always loved, and I still remember, and I think about all the time when I'm with Joe Rogan and he's saying, "Come on, let's do mushrooms." I always think about Lou, who said to me, "Penn, for the rest of your life, if you're ever tempted to do any drug or any alcohol, you call Uncle Lou, and I'll tell you exactly what it's like in ways that's better than doing it."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's the only time he ever called himself Uncle Lou, and it made me laugh so much. You just call Uncle Lou.
How, dude? I mean this, like, because I got to wrap this up because I got to take off to get to Philly. But, dude, how fucking special that is for you, to not only become you're a fan, you find the band, it changes everything of your inside and the way you look at life, and it's brilliant. And then you get to become friends and have a genuine friendship with like a person that has done that, has created all of that. I mean, it's
They say, never meet your heroes,
yeah,
and I think that's good advice. But I found a few of my heroes that their friendship was even more important than their art. And one of them, the Residents, the avant-garde band out of San Francisco, who are anonymous, so I can't say their names,
Mhm.
but they became very good friends of mine. Howard Kalin of the Mothers and of the Turtles, Frank Zappa to a smaller degree. Um, uh, Lou Reed is the top one. Uh, Debbie Harry, of course, became extremely close friends, still is, always. Um, And those people, and Jonathan Richman, I don't want to forget him, they were people that were at the absolute top of my hero list. All the people I named, I'm younger than by 10 to 20 years. They were all heroes at the absolute top. And the remarkable thing about them was they all became friends worth having. And left from that list are the people that I met that I thought I liked their art very much. And I met them and we didn't hit it off, and they're not on that list. There's still people I like their music. I forgot the major one. I mean, I forgot the biggest one of all, which I wouldn't have the others without that, and that's Mike Nesmith.
From the Monkees, yeah. Who I'll give this shout out to Morty, is like, he's fighting for them to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, our writer, and rightfully so, they deserve to be in there.
Nesmith gave me Zappa, and Nesmith gave me Hendrix. He came in on my TV when I was 12 years old, and through all the bullshit and all the Clairol and Dippity-Doo ads, he told me about Zappa and Hendrix, and that was my gateway into everything.
Yeah,
because from Zappa and Hendrix, it doesn't take long to get to everything good. Once you have Hendrix and Zappa, and that's the other thing I always say when I say to Joe Rogan, when he says you should do psychedelics, I always say I've listened to a lot of Hendrix, and I believe that a lot of the genius of LSD came out the guitar of Hendrix.
Absolutely, man. But I'll tell you the truth, though, dude. It is. I just took mushrooms and went to see Alice Cooper the other night, and man, oh man, that was insane. It can be good sometimes, but I get it.
Well, you can join Sam Harris, Joe Rogan, and Rick Rubin. All work on me hard for psychedelics. I'll put Josh on the list too.
Please. Can I tell you something, Penn? Dude, I'm sucking the dick of this booking right now, bro. I am deep-throating. I am gagging on it. That's how bad I don't want this to end. But I want you to know we do have more Velvet Revolver. No, keep calling Velvet Revolver. Velvet Underground. You do Velvet Revolver too. We have more Velvet Underground coming up on the podcast. It would be an honor to have you back on to talk about this. You are our guy, is like the way that Alec Berg is our dude for Radiohead. Like, having you, man, it means like the world. Like, this was so great on a level. I can't wait to re-listen. I can't wait to re-listen to this record now with everything that we just talked about. And that's what I love about this. I also, Jared, we got to give a shout out to the guy who's going to wear my skin that one day. What's his name? Michael.
Yes.
He loves Lou Reed. He wrote a book about it. And Mike, we're going to give you a shout. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get you a copy. The next time I'm in Vegas doing the Rio, I'll make sure, when I'm doing the Cellar, I'll make sure I bring a copy for you, because this guy is a diehard Lou Reed fan, and I'd love to give you this book. He's a rock historian.
I will tell you, I made a promise to Lou that I wouldn't read any biographies of him.
Then never mind. Just keep it in the shelf, because actually the stem looks cool. So, yeah. But besides that,
I know all the books are there, and I'll tell you something. Josh, when you get in your car and you put on Street Hassle and you turn it up, remember, people love you, Josh. You're going to be okay.
We're here for you. Phone call away.
All right. We got to ask you these questions. We ask everybody these questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite song on this record, on Transformer?
Oh, let's say Vicious.
Vicious.
I love that Andy Warhol wrote it.
Yeah, but isn't that? I mean, that is when you talked about him being a doo-wop fan and being this pop fan. That's Louie Louie. It's like it's 2 or 3 chords at the most. It's just,
Yeah.
it's easy. It's perfect. What, all right. Is there anything on this record, which I doubt, but is there anything that you skip over? I would hate to say, we always say, what is there anything you don't like, but I know, is there some, maybe even you've heard it so much, like you've just like, I always go over Walk on the Wild Side because I've heard it a trillion times.
I do go over Walk on the Wild Side sometime. And the last time I heard it, which wasn't too long ago, I said, oh, that's a stupid thing. I still haven't gotten everything out of this song. And on Take No Prisoners, the live record, he does an exegesis on Walk on the Wild Side while he's on cocaine that's really fascinating. He does a 10-minute Walk on the Wild Side where he tells all the stories laid out more.
Wow.
Very
All
Lenny
right.
Bruce.
All right. This is because you know him, it might be a little odd, and I doubt you will, but I gotta ask it. Can you, or can someone, maybe not you, but can you fuck to this record?
What do you mean, can?
I mean, of course you can, but is this a record that can be put on, that should be put on to make love to or fuck?
I don't think you can make love to this record, but I've fucked to it a lot. A lot I've fucked to this record.
This is fucking, I love it. I love it. Yes, you can fuck to this record. Lou Reed is very fuckable. That's just the lyrically, it's like, it's that shit. You're like, you're paying attention to what he says and it's taking you out of it because this story is being written and laid out so perfectly.
Are you accusing me of not being able to come while thinking about a man putting on Pancake Factory #1? Because them's fighting words.
Dude, nah, you can come,
That's
dude.
fighting.
Dude, I know you can. I trust you. I trust you.
Let's not have words. We're just meeting, okay? Let's not have words.
All right. What would be your elevator pitch to get someone to listen to this record, or why is it like? Why do you think this is on the 500 greatest albums list? Any way to be your mission statement for this?
I think I'd have to say, can short stories be told in a pop idiom? Here's short stories being told in a pop idiom.
I love it. This is perfect. Dude, Penn, please promote away anything you want to promote that's going on. We'll also do it at the beginning and at the end after you. But is there anything you really just want to make sure we get out?
Yeah, when you're in Las Vegas, make sure you see David Copperfield. No, we are the longest running show in the history of Las Vegas. The longest running show in the history. Fuck you, Sinatra. Longest running show in the history of Las Vegas. We're at the Rio all the time until we die. And then we got books and shit and everything else. But my name is Penn Jillette. That's all you need to know.
This was truly this was one of my favorite ones that we've done, dude. So thank you so much for coming on, brother.